Hi there, welcome to Inside Archaeology. My name is Rachel, I'm an archaeologist, and one of the things that inspired my love and interest in the past was playing the Tomb Raider games. Lara Croft is one of the most well-known archaeologists in pop culture, and she has spawned multiple movies, comics, and TV series to depict her adventures. The flip side of this popularity, however, is that people often come away from Tomb Raider with very romanticized and inaccurate ideas of how archaeology is done. Not to mention that Lara spends most of her time chasing mythical artifacts and sites that don't exist, although they are often inspired by real life sites and artifacts. The most recent release in Lara's universe is the Netflix series Tomb Raider: The Legend of Lara Croft, released in October 2024. I've taken some time during my maternity leave to watch it all, and today we're going to dig in to where the series and real archaeology intersect. Are the Peril Stones real? What really happened to the Knights Templar? Can you visit Mount Kunlun? What did I think of the series? Keep watching for the answers to these questions as we delve into Chinese mythology and archaeology. Before we break ground, please consider supporting me by subscribing to my channel to learn more about real archaeology. Also, if you like this video, please take a moment to hit like or share. If you are feeling extra generous, all super thanks or Ko-fi donations and sales of Redbubble merchandise go back into improving and promoting the channel. All right, everyone, let's dig in. Firstly, I want to say that a lot of the content I'm speaking about today is based on Chinese mythology and history, and while I'm going to do my best, I don't speak any Chinese languages, so apologies if I mispronounce some of the things that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to cover everything in the rough order that it appears or is mentioned in the series, and obviously, spoiler alert, I'm going to cover the entire series. Episode 1 starts Lara's adventure in Chile, where she's looking for the House of the Jaguar, which, as far as I could find, is a fictional place made up for the game. When she locates it, she discovers that the art and architecture that is there is puzzlingly Chinese in nature, another fictional element, as no Chinese shrines or treasures have ever been found in Chile. She mentions the Chachi people, a reference, I think, to an Ecuadorian ethnic group still existing today, but who definitely never went to Chile, as she implies. One point in Lara's favor here is that when mentioning a date, she uses the term BCE instead of BC, which I personally appreciated. As you may know, the terms BC, before Christ, and AD, Anno Domini, which means year of our Lord in Latin, are used for describing years before or after Jesus' birth in the Gregorian and Julian calendars, which are most popularly used around the world. BCE and CE mean before Common Era and Common Era. It covers the exact same time periods, and it's quite widely used nowadays, including by myself, by academics as a secular term for marking time, especially when we're not discussing Christian history, as is the case here. And for anyone who wants to call me woke for using it, I mean, get a life. Like, it's the internet, it's my channel, I'm allowed to do what I want. And B, it's actually was first used in the 1600s by a German scientist and academic, and was later picked up by Jewish scholars who used the Christian calendar but didn't want to refer to Christ as the Lord with the abbreviation AD. So it's been around for ages, it's not new. Once Lara gets back home with her new treasure, we have a time skip forward 3 years and eventually end up back at Croft Manor, where she has decided to get rid of all of her artifacts via a donation to the British Museum. The green box that she recovered in Chile is then stolen by Charles Devereux, sparking her quest for the rest of the series to get it back. Episode 2 brings Lara to China in search of a second red box in the shrine of Qianxi Sing. Instead, she ends up at a shrine of Daji, a fox spirit, rescuing some children. My research indicates that in this series, Qianxi Sing is another name for King Di Jin, the last king of the Shang dynasty. While it's thought that he did exist, a significant amount of information regarding his life has been falsified by following dynasties, and that makes it really difficult to sift fact from fiction when looking at him. In legends, he is depicted as a good king who was then corrupted and became a bad king under the influence of his wicked concubine Daji, who is portrayed in Chinese mythology as a malevolent fox spirit who kills and impersonates the real Daji. Her identification as a fox spirit dates to at least the Tang dynasty. She is considered a classic example of how a beautiful femme fatale can cause the downfall of a dynasty in Chinese culture. According to a popular later 16th century novel called In the Investiture of the Gods, Di Xin visited the goddess Nüwa's temple and offended her. In response, Nüwa decided that the Shang dynasty should end and sent her three subordinates to become three beautiful women, including Daji, to bewitch him. Under the influence of these women, Di Xin becomes a ruthless king, losing the support of his people and triggering his downfall. From the southern and northern dynasty period on, Daji was believed to be an incarnation of a nine-tailed fox and was associated with many shrines. During the Song dynasty, fox spirit cults became outlawed. I also found an interesting story that credits her with the creation of foot binding to hide her fox feet. Eventually, Di Xin was defeated at the Battle of Muyi in 1046 BCE by the rival Zhou dynasty. He then gathered all of his treasures around himself and set fire to his palace, committing suicide. Daji was executed. Dijin was then given the posthumous name Zhou, meaning horse crupper, which is a piece of the saddle that goes behind a horse's tail and is the most likely to get soiled. It is not meant to be a compliment. Archaeologically speaking, tomb 1567, which is located at the capital of Shang, is thought to have been constructed for King Zhou, but he wasn't buried there due to his suicide after the Battle of Muyi. And this is pretty much the extent of the information that I could find about him. There's a lot of it is mythical and legendary, and it was really difficult to find a lot of historical archaeological references. There is also a brief reference in this episode to the Tang dynasty and Turkish mercenaries, who then went back to Constantinople to eventually become the Immortals, which personally I think is an Easter egg reference to the Rise of the Tomb Raider game, where Lara encounters said Immortals. The game gets it half right that the Immortals were one of the elite military units of the Byzantine Empire, first raised during the late 10th century. Their Greek name is Athanatoi, which derives from the words a, meaning without, and thanatos, meaning death, which is where we get immortals from. I didn't find any reference to them being Turkish, as they were originally young Greek local Byzantine men of noble status. They were described as heavily armored shock cavalry, sheathed in armor, or as armed horsemen adorned with gold. They disbanded after the death of the emperor who founded the unit, but were revived again in 1071 to actually fight against the Seljuk Turks. Back to the series, there is mention of digitized criminal records going back to the 11th century. I wish it was that easy to search historical records on the internet for information you need. Unfortunately, it's not. There is also not an international guild that restores and repairs artifacts, then repatriates them, located somewhere in China. Perhaps the closest thing to this is the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section unit from World War II, also known as the Monuments Men, but they were protecting artifacts from Nazis, not necessarily giving them back to who they belonged to. This seems to be a bit of a paltry attempt to highlight what should be happening to artifacts in modern day. It's in episode 3, while visiting this guild, that Lara learns the origins of the artifacts that are at the center of this story. The Peril Stones, along with more information about their creator, the goddess Nüwa. In the show, the 4 Peril Stones embody the chaotic elements of greed, wrath, betrayal, and power, which, when unleashed, disrupt balance and unleash chaos on the world. The stones are a very loose adaptation of the 4 perils of Chinese mythology, malevolent beings or beasts, who are known as the Hundun, aka chaos, Chongqi, which represents deviousness, Tao Wu, aka ignorance, and Tao Ti, which represents greed. In terms of their origins, according to one myth, before primordial China was united by the Yellow Emperor, tribal rebellions ran rampant, during which time there arose 4 clan leaders who were particularly disobedient. In order to punish their defiance, Emperor Yao banished all 4 barbaric communities. When the rebel leaders died, they continued to haunt the region as the 4 perils. It's speculated that the tribes used to carve these chimerical creatures on their totems to display a reverence to them. Nüwa is a mother goddess, culture hero, and/or member of the 3 sovereigns of Chinese mythology. She is a goddess in the Chinese folk religion, Chinese Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. She is credited with molding the first humans from clay and repairing the Pillar of Heaven. And I didn't find any references connecting her directly with the Four Perils or creating stones. As Lara heads to Paris in episode 4 to find out more about the mysterious organization called The Light, I just have to say, why can't she be normal like the rest of us and use public transport? Like, what need does she have to parkour across the rooftops of Paris? I don't get it. This episode features one of media's favorite tropes when it comes to secret societies, the Knights Templar, aka the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, a Catholic military order founded around 1119, just after the First Crusade. They started as an elite group of knights who defended Christian pilgrims venturing across Europe to the Holy Land. They initially relied on donations to support their operations, but quickly became a favored charity and grew rapidly in membership, money, and power. Templar knights were among the most skilled fighting units of the Crusades, and they were also prominent in Christian finance, as non-combatant Templars managed a large economic network and developed innovative financial techniques like letters of credit, aka credit cards, that were precursors to modern banking practices. Eventually, their support faded as they became unable to secure their holdings in the Holy Land. Rumors about their secret initiation ceremony created distrust, and in 1307, King Philip IV of France, who was deeply in debt to the order, I will mention, pressured the Pope to have many of the order's members in France arrested and tortured into giving false confessions to over 100 different charges, including heresy, homosexual relations, spitting and urinating on the cross, and sodomy. The validity of most of these charges is questionable, as they were the same charges that were leveled against many of King Philip's enemies. And the name Baphomet, which is mentioned as a god or a deity that the Templars are worshiping here in the show, does actually appear in the trial transcripts from 1307. He is a goat-headed deity that the Templars were accused of worshiping. The description of Baphomet changed from confession to confession. Some deny any knowledge of it, while others who confessed under torture described it as being either a severed head, a cat, or a head with 3 faces. Regardless of whether the Templars actually engaged in heretical worship, they were all convicted and then burned at the stake. In 1312, Pope Clement V disbanded the order. The abrupt disappearance of a major part of medieval European infrastructure gave rise to speculation and legends about their continued existence. Some people think that the Templars went underground and continued to operate in secret, as is shown in the show. Modern organizations like the Freemasons are often believed to be their descendants, and in the show, they have become the Light. It's worth noting that while conspiracy theories and fiction novels place the Knights Templar as guardians of religious relics like the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant, these peril stones that don't exist in real life have obviously never been mentioned. In episode 5, Lara heads to Pasargadae, a real place in Iran which was the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, aka the First Persian Empire. Today, it is an archaeological and UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was founded in the 6th century BCE by Cyrus the Great, and it remained the capital of the empire until Darius moved it to Persepolis. The archaeological site covers 1.6 square kilometers, and it contains the alleged mausoleum of Cyrus, the fortress of Tol Ektakht, sitting atop a nearby hill, and the remains of 2 royal palaces and gardens. The site was first archaeologically explored in 1905, and in the 1960s, a pot hoard known as the Pasargadae treasure was found near the foundations of Pavilion B. Dating to the 4th to 5th centuries BCE, the treasure consists of ornate Persian jewelry made from gold and precious gems. It's now housed in the National Museum of Iran and the British Museum. The tomb of Cyrus the Great is Pasargadae's most famous monument and features very, very briefly in the show. It has 6 broad steps leading into a sepulchre. The chamber within measures roughly 3 meters long by 2 meters wide by 2 meters high and has a low and narrow entrance. Though there is no firm evidence identifying the tomb as actually being that of Cyrus, Greek historians say that Alexander the Great believed it was. After looting and destroying Persepolis, Alexander paid a visit to this tomb. A document from the 2nd century CE, 500 years after Alexander died, which is referencing a document written at the time that he was alive, says that he commanded one of his warriors to enter the monument. Inside, a golden bed, a table set with drinking vessels, a gold coffin, some ornaments studded with precious stones, and an inscription were found. The historians Strabo and Arrian reported that the inscription said, "Passerby, I am Cyrus, who gave the Persians an empire and was king of Asia. Grudge me not, therefore, this monument." Unfortunately, no trace of any kind of inscription survives to this day, and there is considerable disagreement about its exact wording. Another interesting fact about the mausoleum is that it is a significant example of earthquake engineering, as it is said to be the oldest base isolated structure in the world, allowing it great resilience against seismic activity, which has certainly contributed to why it's still present today. Episode 6 is focused on finding the site of the Battle of Zulo in China. This was a prehistoric battle fought between the Yanghuan tribes led by the legendary Yellow Emperor and the Zhou tribes led by Qi Yu. The victory for the Yellow Emperor here is often thought to be historically accurate, although almost everything from that time period is considered to be legendary. Afterward, the Yellow Emperor built his capital in Zulo and established the agricultural confederacy that later came to be known as the Huaxia civilization, which would then evolve into the Han Chinese nation. I wasn't able to determine if the site of the battle is actually known or located somewhere. The only reference I could find to its location says that it was fought near the present-day border of Hebei and Shanxi. Certainly, there doesn't seem to be a modern-day shrine turned theme park dedicated to it either, although feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about this. Episode 7 doesn't really feature any archaeology or history, so we'll skip it and just go to episode 8 as Lara and Jonah attempt to return the peril stones to Nüwa on Mount Kunlun. The Kunlun or Kunlun Shan is a mountain or mountain range in Chinese mythology. Various legends, myths, and semi-historical accounts in which it appears have given it many different locations, but generally speaking, it's not considered to be a real place, or at least it's not one that you can visit as a tourist. These accounts typically describe Kunlun as the dwelling place of various gods and goddesses, where fabled plants and mythical creatures may also be found. Many important events in Chinese mythology are based around Kunlun, and in general, accounts emphasize the difficulty of access to it and its hallowed places due to its surrounding waters and steep cliffs of immense heights that we do kind of see in the show. The flora of Kunlun and its environs is in keeping with the rest of its natural and supernatural qualities, including the pearl and jade trees and the tree of immortality. However, I didn't find any mention of T-Rexes and other dinosaurs living there, although I guess if it's supposed to be mythological, we can't rule it entirely out, I guess. That's it for the archaeological background featured in the game. Now I'm going to tell you what I thought of it. Broadly speaking, I was underwhelmed. I definitely enjoy playing the games a lot more. I saw a comment on Reddit that sums up my impression pretty well, which said that each game in the most recent trilogy was supposed to feel like an evolution of Lara's character, but really just kind of felt like they were the same game repeated but set somewhere different. And I totally agree with this. And I would even go so far to say, as this continues with the series, I didn't really see much character growth from Lara, and I got a bit tired of the action sequences that mimicked stuff you used to have to do in the game. That being said, I think the track they're taking with the story, where they're trying to kind of modernize Lara, is a really difficult one. And, kudos to them for even attempting it. Lara as a character came into being in the 90s when we were a lot less politically correct in general, and before people expected lots of story and character development in a video game. What modern audiences expect in their games is different now, and so the developers are stuck trying to shoehorn depth into Lara's character to create a backstory explaining why she is the way she is in the original games. Personally, they're not really achieving that for me, but I'll also say I don't know if that's something that can even really be done well. I very much disagree with the curator's statement at the end where he says that Lara is a godsend to archaeology just because she's donating a bunch of artifacts that her and her family have stolen from lots of different places all over the world. Also, she doesn't spend any time actually doing archaeology. She's never on a dig or doing much research. She's just running around punching people and stealing stuff to allegedly save the world. So overall, it fell kind of flat for me, but I'll still tune in for season 2, which the series has officially been picked up for. Okay, time to pack up our tools. That's everything for today. What did you think of the series? Did you watch it and like it? Did you dislike it? Did you feel kind of meh about it like I did? Are there any important artifacts or sites that I missed talking about? Let me know what you thought. Don't forget to comment, like, or subscribe to the channel before you leave. If you're feeling extra generous, Ko-fi donations, super thanks, and Redbubble merch go a long way to helping me keep the channel going. Taking a few seconds to support me in any way you can shows the algorithm that people are interested in real archaeology. Thank you so much for watching. Stay curious, and I hope to see you on my next adventure into the world of archaeology.